Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the main screen of her ship, the Endeavor. What she saw made no sense. Floating in space before them was the biggest graveyard she had ever seen. Broken ships stretched across 3 entire star systems. Metal twisted and burned, floated everywhere like a frozen ocean of death. "How long has this been here?" she asked her science officer. Dr. Marcus Chen looked up from his scanner. His face was pale. "Captain, the energy readings say this battle happened 50,000 years ago. But that's impossible." Elena walked closer to the screen. The dead ships were huge. Some were the size of small moons. Their designs were strange and alien. She had never seen anything like them in all her years exploring space. "What kind of weapons could do this?" she whispered. Chen shook his head. "I don't know. The damage patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Whatever happened here, it was beyond anything we understand." The Endeavor was a deep space survey ship. Elena and her crew spent their time looking for new planets and studying old ruins. They had found many strange things in their travels, but nothing like this. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "I'm picking up something strange. There's a ship in the middle of all this wreckage. It's giving off quantum readings." Elena frowned. "Quantum readings? What kind of ship uses quantum technology?" "That's just it, Captain. The readings say it's human." The bridge went silent. Elena felt her heart skip a beat. "Human? That's impossible. Humans didn't have ships 50,000 years ago. We were barely learning to make fire." Chen stood up quickly. "Captain, I need to see this myself." He moved to the main scanner and began working. After a few minutes, his hands stopped moving. "Captain, you need to see this." Elena walked over to look at Chen's screen. There, highlighted in blue light, was the outline of a ship. It was massive, 15 kilometers long. Its hull was smooth and powerful-looking. Weapons covered every surface. But the most shocking thing was the writing on its side. In clear English letters, it read, UES Prometheus. UES stands for United Earthship, Torres said quietly. "But how can that be?" Elena stared at the image. The ship looked more advanced than anything Earth had ever built. Their best battleships were only 3 kilometers long. This thing was 5 times bigger and looked like it could destroy entire fleets. "Chen, run a full scan. I want to know everything about that ship." Chen worked for several minutes, then stopped. "Captain, the scanners can't get a clear reading. The ship seems to be flickering." "Flickering? It's like it's there and not there at the same time. The quantum field around it is doing something to space itself. Every time I try to scan it, the readings change." Elena made a decision. "Torres, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we found something they need to see. Chen, I want you to study that quantum field. Figure out what's keeping that ship locked in place." Over the next 3 hours, the crew of the Endeavor worked to understand what they had found. Chen discovered that the human ship was trapped in something called a temporal stasis field. Time moved differently around it. The ship existed in a bubble where past and present mixed together. "Captain," Chen said, excitement in his voice, "I think I understand what happened. This ship isn't from 50,000 years ago. It's from our future." Elena looked at him. "What do you mean?" "The quantum field is a time lock. Someone sent this ship back through time and froze it here. It's been waiting." "Waiting for what?" Chen shook his head. "I don't know, but Captain, look at this." He showed her readings from the battle site. The other ships, the alien ones, they were all destroyed by weapons that don't exist yet. Energy signatures that are centuries ahead of our technology. Elena studied the data. The alien ships had been cut apart like paper. Whatever weapons the Prometheus carried, they were far beyond anything humans had ever built. "How many alien ships are here?" she asked. Torres answered, from her station. I count over 10,000 wrecks, Captain. They came from all directions, like they were trying to surround something. And they all attacked the Prometheus? It looks that way. But, Captain, here's the strange part. I can only find pieces of one human ship. The Prometheus fought this entire fleet alone. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. One human ship against 10,000 alien vessels, and the human ship had won. A new voice spoke up from the back of the bridge. Captain, Admiral Cross is calling from Earth. She wants to speak with you personally. Elena walked to her ready room and activated the long-range communicator. Admiral Sarah Cross appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with gray hair and serious eyes. Captain Vasquez, I've read your report. Are you certain about what you found? Yes, Admiral. The ship is definitely human, and definitely from our future. The quantum readings are unlike anything we've ever seen. Admiral Cross was quiet for a moment. Captain, what I'm about to tell you is classified. 3 days ago, our deep space monitors detected quantum signatures moving toward Earth. Something big is coming and we don't know what it is. Elena felt her stomach drop. You think it's connected to what we found? I think your discovery might be the key to humanity's survival. Captain, I'm sending a fleet to your location. You're to secure that ship and bring it back to Earth immediately. Admiral, the quantum field around it is unstable. Moving it could be dangerous. Captain, we may not have a choice. Whatever that ship was built to fight, it might be coming. For us. We need to understand its technology before it's too late. The communication ended. Elena sat back in her chair, thinking about what she had learned. A human ship from the future, weapons beyond imagination, and something unknown heading toward Earth. She had the feeling that her simple survey mission had just become the most important discovery in human history. She returned to the bridge where Chen was still studying the quantum readings. Chen, how long would it take to figure out how to move that ship? Chen looked worried. Captain, the quantum field is incredibly complex. If we make a mistake, we could tear a hole in space itself. Or worse, we could break the time lock and cause a paradox. How long? Elena asked again. At least a week to understand the basics, maybe a month to safely move it. Elena looked at the image of the Prometheus on the main screen. The ship seemed to pulse with hidden power, waiting for something. She had the strange feeling that it was waiting for them. We don't have a month, she said quietly. Get me everything you can about that ship. And Chen? Yes, Captain. Whatever built the Prometheus, whatever it was designed to fight, I have a feeling we're about to meet it face to face. As Elena spoke these words, she didn't know how right she was. Deep in space, moving faster than light itself, an alien fleet was heading toward Earth. The same kind of fleet that had attacked the Prometheus 50,000 years ago. The same fleet that had been destroyed by weapons from humanity's future. Time was running out, and the only thing that could save them was locked in a quantum field, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The research station looked like a metal flower floating in space. Admiral Cross had built it in just 1 week, using every resource Earth could spare. The station had one purpose, to study the ship called Prometheus. Dr. Marcus Chen stood in the main laboratory, surrounded by quantum computers and scanning equipment. He had not slept properly in days. The readings from the alien ship made his head hurt, but he could not stop studying them. The quantum field is getting weaker, he told Admiral Cross during their daily meeting. Every hour, more energy leaks out. If this continues, the time lock will fail completely. Admiral Cross looked tired. She had dark circles under her eyes. How long do we have? Maybe 3 days. Maybe less. Captain Elena Vasquez entered the room carrying a datapad. Admiral, we've finished moving the Prometheus to the station. It's locked in place, but Chen is right. The quantum field is breaking down. Chen pointed to his screens. Look at this. Every few hours the ship flickers. For just a moment we can see inside it. And Admiral, there are people in there. Admiral! Cross moved closer to the screen. People? After 50,000 years? The time lock kept them frozen, Chen explained. But as the field weakens, they're starting to wake up. We've detected life signs from over 12,000 crew members. Elena shook her head in amazement. 12,000 people on one ship. Our biggest vessels only carry 300. Suddenly, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Chen ran to his computers. Admiral, we have a problem. The quantum field is collapsing faster than expected. On the main screen, the Prometheus began to flicker like a broken television. One moment it was solid, the next it was transparent. Through the transparent hull, they could see people moving around inside. Can we talk to them? Admiral Cross asked. Chen worked frantically at his controls. I'm trying to establish communication, but the temporal interference is too strong. The ship flickered again, staying solid for almost a full minute. During that time, Chen's scanners picked up something impossible. Admiral, you need to see this. I'm reading weapons signatures from inside the ship. The energy levels are... they're off the charts. How off the charts? Elena asked. Chen's voice was quiet with fear. Each weapon system on that ship produces more energy than our entire fleet combined. Admiral, this isn't just a battleship. It's a weapon of mass destruction. The Prometheus flickered once more, and this time they heard voices coming through. The communication system. The voices spoke English, but with accents they had never heard before. Temporal lock is failing. Need to prepare for... The voices faded as the ship became transparent again. Admiral Cross made a decision. Chen, I want you to break the quantum field deliberately. We need to talk to these people before something else goes wrong. Admiral, that could be dangerous. We don't know what will happen when the time lock fails completely. We don't have a choice. Do it. Chen began working on his computers, typing in complex equations. I'll need to overload the quantum generators. This will cause a cascade failure, but it should break the lock safely. As Chen worked, Elena watched the Prometheus through the observation window. The ship was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull was smooth black metal that seemed to absorb light. The weapons were built into the ship's structure so well that they looked like art rather than instruments of war. Ready, Admiral, Chen announced. Once I start this process, there's no stopping it. Do it. Chen pressed a button, and immediately the quantum field around the Prometheus began to change color. Blue energy turned to green, then to red. The ship started flickering faster and faster. Field collapse in 30 seconds, Chen called out. Everyone on the station held their breath. If this went wrong, the temporal paradox could destroy everything within light years. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The quantum field exploded in a burst of white light. When the light faded, the Prometheus hung in space, completely solid for the first time in 50,000 years. Life support is stable, Chen reported. All crew members are alive and conscious. Admiral Cross activated the communication system. Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Cross of the Earth Defense Force. Please respond. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a man's voice came through the speakers. His accent was strange, like English spoken by someone from another time. Admiral Cross, this is Captain Marcus Wright of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We have been waiting a very long time to speak with you. Elena felt a chill. Waiting? How did you know we would be here? Captain Wright's voice carried sadness and determination. Because we came here to save you. All of you. Earth, humanity, everything we are and everything we will become. Admiral Cross leaned forward. Save us from what? From the hegemony. They are coming, Admiral. The greatest war machine the galaxy has ever seen. They have destroyed 1,000 civilizations. In 30 years, they will find Earth. Chen checked his instruments. Captain Wright, our records show this battle happened 50,000 years ago. How is that possible? Wright's voice became grim. Because we are from your future, Dr. Chen. I was born in the year 2847. The hegemony found Earth in 2417. They gave us a choice: become their slaves or die. Humanity chose to fight. Admiral Cross asked the question everyone was thinking. Did we win? There was a long pause before Wright answered. We lost. Earth was destroyed, billions died. But before the end, our scientists built a time machine. They sent me and my crew back to this moment, to this place, to give humanity a second chance. Elena felt her legs go weak. Our entire planet destroyed? Yes. But that future no longer has to happen. The Prometheus carries technology from your future, weapons and defenses that can stop the hegemony. We can teach you to build them. Chen was looking at his scanners again. Captain Wright, I'm reading incredible energy signatures from your ship. What kind of weapons do you have? Wright's voice carried pride and fear. Quantum cannons that can delete matter from existence. Probability shields that make attacks miss by changing reality itself. Temporal mines that send enemy ships into the past. And more, much more. Admiral Cross stood up straighter. Captain Wright, we want to learn. We want to save Earth, but we need proof. We need to see what your ship can do. Admiral, I understand your doubt, but I must warn you, the technology on this ship will change humanity forever. The weapons we carry require genetic modifications to use safely. The crew of the Prometheus is no longer entirely human. Elena asked, What do you mean? We have been enhanced. Our minds work faster. Our bodies are stronger. We can interface directly with the ship's computers. But in becoming more than human, we may have lost something of what makes us human. Chen looked up from his instruments with excitement and terror in his eyes. Admiral, I'm picking up quantum signatures approaching our position. Multiple contacts moving faster than anything should be able to move. Wright's voice became urgent. Admiral, how many ships are approaching? Chen checked his readings again. 3 contacts. They're massive. Each one is 30 kilometers long. Hegemony dreadnoughts, Wright said grimly. They found us sooner than expected. Admiral, you have a choice to make right now. Let us defend Earth with technology you don't understand, or watch your world burn. Admiral Cross looked at Elena, then at Chen. The future of humanity hung in the balance. Captain Wright, what do you need from us? Permission to fight, and the courage to become something more than what we are now. On the sensors, the 3 alien ships dropped out of hyperspace. They were black as space itself, covered in weapons that glowed with dangerous energy. Each ship was twice the size of the Prometheus. Wright's voice came through the speakers one more time. Admiral, the war for humanity's survival begins now. Captain Marcus Wright stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, looking at screens that showed impossible things. His crew moved around him with fluid grace, their enhanced minds working faster than normal humans could think. They had been changed by technology from a future that might never happen. Athena, show me the approaching ships, Wright commanded. A woman's voice answered, but it came from everywhere at once. Displaying hegemony dreadnoughts, Captain. 3 vessels of the destroyer. Class, each carries enough firepower to eliminate all life on a planet. On the main screen, the alien ships appeared. They were dark triangles covered in glowing weapons. Energy danced around their hulls like captured lightning. Wright had seen ships like these destroy his home world. Admiral Cross's voice came through, the communication system from the research station. Captain Wright, our defense fleet is moving to intercept. We have 12 battleships heading toward those alien vessels. Wright felt his enhanced heart sink. 12 ships against 3 dreadnoughts was not a battle. It was a massacre waiting to happen. Admiral, recall your ships immediately. Your weapons cannot hurt them. Captain, we have to try. Those ships will reach Earth in 6 hours. Wright turned to his tactical officer, a woman whose eyes glowed with computer interfaces. Lieutenant Hayes, show the Admiral what happened the last time Earth's fleet fought the hegemony. Hayes touched a panel with her mind rather than her hands. The research station's screens filled with images from the future. Earth's ships attacking the black triangles with lasers and missiles. The weapons bounced off the alien hulls like raindrops. Then the dreadnoughts fired back. The Earth. Ships disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded. They simply stopped existing. Admiral Cross's voice was quiet. "How is that possible?" Wright explained while watching his crew prepare the Prometheus for battle. "The hegemony uses reality manipulation technology. Their weapons don't just destroy matter. They convince the universe that the target never existed." Dr. Chen's voice joined the conversation. "That's impossible. You can't just delete things from reality. Dr. Chen, you still think in terms of normal physics. The hegemony conquered the galaxy because they learned to break those rules. They don't just have advanced technology, they have evolved beyond the laws that govern normal matter." Athena's voice filled the bridge. "Captain, the hegemony ships are transmitting a message to Earth. Let's hear it." A new voice came through the speakers. It sounded like grinding metal mixed with the whisper of wind. The words were in perfect English, but they felt wrong somehow. "Primitive humans of the third planet, you have been chosen for absorption into the hegemony. Surrender your world, and your species will be preserved as workers. Resist, and your existence will be eliminated from all timelines. You have one of your hours to decide," Admiral Cross responded immediately. "This is Admiral Sarah Cross of Earth. We reject your demands. Earth will never surrender." The alien voice seemed amused. "Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot escape us. Your resistance is mathematically impossible. We have destroyed 1,000 civilizations. You will be 1,001. Wright stepped forward. "This is Captain Marcus Wright of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We have a different offer for you." There was silence for several seconds. Then the alien voice returned, sounding surprised. "Impossible. Our scans show only primitive human technology in this system. Your scans are wrong. Earth is under the protection of weapons from your future. Leave now or face consequences beyond your understanding." The alien voice became angry. "No primitive species possesses technology superior to the hegemony. We will demonstrate the price of defiance." The communication ended. On the tactical display, the 3 dreadnoughts began moving toward Earth faster than light itself. Wright turned to his crew. "All hands, prepare for quantum combat. Engineering, bring the probability drives online. Weapons, charge the reality cannons." Lieutenant Hayes looked up from her station. "Captain, we only have 3,000 crew members aboard. The ship is designed for 12,000. We're operating at quarter strength. It will have to be enough. Athena, can you compensate for the missing crew?" "Affirmative, Captain. However, the neural link requirements will be severe. Each crew member will need to interface with 4 times the normal number of systems." Wright nodded. He had expected this. The neural links allowed human minds to control the ship's impossible technology, but they came with a price. "Too much interfacing could burn out a human brain permanently. Do it. All crew members, prepare for deep neural interface." Around the bridge, Wright's officers placed metal bands around their heads. The bands connected directly to their enhanced nervous systems. When they activated, their eyes stopped looking entirely human. Patterns of light moved behind their pupils like living computer code. Wright put on his own neural crown. Immediately, his consciousness expanded. He could feel every part of the Prometheus as if it were his own body. The ship's weapons became extensions of his will. The quantum drives responded to his thoughts. "Athena, merge with my neural pattern. We fight as one." "Merging now, Captain." Wright felt the artificial intelligence join with his mind. Suddenly, he could think faster than any human had ever thought. He could see probability patterns stretching into possible futures. He could feel the quantum structure of space itself. The 3 hegemony dreadnoughts dropped out of hyperspace near Earth. They were even larger than Wright remembered. Each one carried weapons that had destroyed civilizations older than humanity. Admiral cross-watched from the research station as her defense fleet approached the alien ships. She knew Wright was right about her weapons being useless, but she had to try. The first Earth battleship fired its main laser cannon at the lead dreadnought. The beam struck the alien ship and simply disappeared, as if the metal had absorbed the light completely. The dreadnought responded by firing a single shot. The Earth battleship flickered once, then vanished. Not destroyed, erased. On every scanner, every sensor, every record, the ship had never existed. "Dear God," Admiral Cross whispered. Wright's voice came through the communication system, but it sounded different now. Multiple voices speaking as one. "Admiral, evacuate your remaining ships immediately. We are engaging the enemy." The Prometheus moved toward the 3 dreadnoughts. Compared to the alien ships, it looked tiny. The smallest dreadnought was twice as long as the human vessel. Wright felt the ship respond to his enhanced thoughts. The quantum drives activated, and the Prometheus began to exist in multiple dimensions at once. To outside observers, it looked like the ship was becoming transparent. "Target the lead dreadnought," Wright commanded through the neural link. "Fire probability cannon, setting 7. The Prometheus fired a weapon that looked like twisted space itself. The beam struck the first dreadnought, and something impossible happened. The alien ship began to flicker between existing and not existing. The hegemony commander's voice returned, but now it sounded confused. "Impossible. Our reality. Anchors should prevent quantum manipulation." Wright smiled, and through the neural link his crew smiled with him. "Your technology is 1,000 years old. Ours is from your future." The second dreadnought fired at the Prometheus. A beam of pure destruction that should have erased the human ship from existence struck the quantum shields. Instead of being destroyed, the attack was redirected into an alternate timeline where the Prometheus didn't exist. "Lieutenant Hayes, target their quantum generators. Show them what happens when someone from the future comes to play." Hayes fired the ship's main weapons array. 7 different beams of impossible energy struck the second dreadnought simultaneously. The alien ship tried to use its reality manipulation to survive, but the human weapons operated on principles the hegemony had never encountered. The dreadnought simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged. It hung in space like a dead thing. All its systems frozen in a temporal loop. The third dreadnought tried to retreat, but Wright was ready for that. "Athena, deploy temporal mines around their escape vector." "Deploying mines, Captain." Invisible weapons appeared in space around the fleeing alien ship. When the dreadnought tried to enter hyperspace, the mines activated. The ship was caught in a time distortion that sent it backward through its own timeline. Wright watched as the alien vessel aged in reverse, becoming newer and newer, until it flickered out of existence entirely. The battle was over. 3 hegemony dreadnoughts had been defeated by 1 human ship in less than 10 minutes. Admiral Cross's voice came through the communication system, filled with awe and fear. "Captain Wright, what did you just do?" Wright removed his neural crown, feeling his consciousness return to normal human limits. "We showed the galaxy that humanity has evolved beyond their ability to destroy us." But even as he spoke, Wright knew this was only the beginning. The hegemony had 10,000 dreadnoughts. And now they knew that Earth possessed weapons from the future. The real war was about to begin. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the capital of the hegemony, 10,000 light-years from Earth, something impossible was happening. For the first time in 100,000 years, the rulers of the galaxy were afraid. The hegemony high command met in a chamber that existed outside normal space. 12 beings that had once been organic, but were now more machine than flesh, gathered around a table made of crystallized time. 3 dreadnoughts, spoke the first being. its voice like the sound of dying stars. Defeated by a single primitive vessel. Not primitive, corrected another. The quantum signatures match theoretical weapons from our projected future development. Somehow, these humans possess technology we have not yet invented. The Supreme Commander, a being so old it remembered the first galaxy the hegemony had conquered, activated a holographic display. The battle near Earth played out in perfect detail. Observe. The human vessel uses probability manipulation, temporal displacement, and reality restructuring. These are technologies that should not exist for another 1,000 years. How is this possible? Asked a third member of the High Command. Time travel, the Supreme Commander answered. The humans have sent weapons back from their future. This explains the quantum signatures we detected in the ancient battlefield near their system. The chamber filled with the sound of mechanical breathing and electronic thought processes. The High Command had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered a species that could match their weapons. What are our options? Asked the first being. The Supreme Commander manipulated the holographic display, showing the location of Earth relative to the rest of hegemony space. We have 3 choices. First, we could ignore this system and allow humanity to develop their timeline naturally. Unacceptable. Several members of the High Command spoke at once. No species may possess technology superior to our own. Second, we could negotiate. Offer them a place in the hegemony as equals rather than slaves. Again, rejection from the assembled beings. The hegemony does not negotiate. We conquer or we destroy. Third, the Supreme Commander continued, we could deploy the First Fleet. 1,000 dreadnoughts with reality anchors and temporal stabilizers. Even future technology cannot stand against such overwhelming force. The chamber fell silent. The First Fleet had not been deployed in 50,000 years. It was the hegemony's ultimate weapon, capable of destroying entire star clusters. The cost would be enormous, one being pointed out. Moving the First Fleet would leave our core, worlds undefended. The risk of allowing these humans to develop further is greater, the Supreme Commander replied. If they possess weapons from their future, they may also possess the ability to change their past. They could create a timeline where the hegemony never existed. On Earth, Captain Wright stood in a meeting room filled with leaders from every nation. The revelation that aliens existed and wanted to destroy humanity had changed everything. Political differences that had seemed important a week ago now meant nothing. Admiral Cross presented the situation to the assembled leaders. Captain Wright's ship proved that we can fight the hegemony. But this was only 3 ships. Intelligence suggests they have thousands more. The President of the Americas leaned forward. Captain Wright, how many ships like the Prometheus would... We need to defend Earth? Wright's enhanced mind calculated probabilities and outcomes faster than any computer. In my timeline, it took 50 Prometheus-class vessels to hold off the hegemony for 1 year. But that was a defensive war. To win permanently, we would need to strike at their core worlds. The Chancellor of Europa asked the question everyone was thinking. How long would it take to build such a fleet? Dr. Chen answered from his position at the science table. The technology is incredibly complex. Each ship requires quantum processors that we don't know how to manufacture. The weapons systems use materials that don't exist in normal space. We're looking at decades of development, minimum. Wright shook his head. We don't have decades. My ship's computers have been monitoring hegemony communications. They're mobilizing their First Fleet. 1,000 dreadnoughts, each more powerful than the 3 we just destroyed. Silence filled the room. The leaders of Earth realized they were facing an enemy that could deploy 1,000 ships, each capable of destroying planets. The Prime Minister of the Asian Federation spoke carefully. Captain Wright, you mentioned that your crew has been genetically modified to use this technology. Could we modify more humans? Wright's expression became grim. The modifications are dangerous. Out of every 100 volunteers, only 12 survive the process, and those who survive, they're no longer entirely human. Admiral Cross stood up. Captain, what exactly do you mean by no longer entirely human? Wright activated a holographic display showing brain scans. The neural interfaces required to control quantum weapons change how the mind works. Enhanced humans think faster, but they also think differently. Emotions become muted. Personal relationships become difficult. The crew of the Prometheus chose to sacrifice their humanity to save their species. Dr. Chen studied the brain scans with fascination and horror. The neural pathways are completely restructured. These people are essentially a new form of human life. Could we build automated ships instead? Asked the President of the Americas. Remove humans from the equation entirely? Wright shook his head. Quantum weapons require consciousness to function properly. Artificial intelligence alone isn't enough. The weapons need the creative unpredictability of human thought combined with enhanced processing power. The Chancellor of Europa asked, "How many volunteers would we need?" For one ship, 12,000 crew members. That means we would need 100,000 volunteers to have enough survivors for a single vessel. The room erupted in discussion. Asking 100,000 people to risk their lives with only a 12% survival rate seemed impossible. Admiral Cross raised her hand for silence. We're talking about the survival of our entire species. If the choice is between sacrificing 100,000 volunteers or losing 8 billion people, the mathematics are clear. Wright's enhanced hearing picked up communications from space. His expression changed to one of urgency. Ladies and gentlemen, this discussion may be academic. Athena is detecting quantum signatures throughout the solar system. The hegemony is deploying long-range sensors. Dr. Chen checked his instruments. Captain, I'm reading massive energy buildups near Jupiter. Something big is coming. Wright closed his eyes and interfaced directly with the Prometheus's sensors through his neural implants. What he saw made his enhanced heart race. They're opening. A hyperspace gateway. Based on the energy signature, it's large enough for their entire first fleet. The leaders in the room looked at each other with growing panic. Admiral Cross asked the question they all feared to voice. How long do we have? Wright's consciousness touched the quantum sensors of his ship, feeling the fabric of space bend and twist as the aliens prepared their assault. 72 hours. Maybe less. The President of the Americas stood up quickly. That's not enough time to build more ships or train more crews. Wright nodded grimly. One ship against 1,000. The same odds that destroyed my Earth in the original timeline. But you have future technology, the Chancellor pointed out. Surely that gives us an advantage. The First Fleet carries reality anchors specifically designed to neutralize quantum weapons. The hegemony learned from our battle tactics in my timeline. They've prepared countermeasures. Dr. Chen looked up from his calculations. Captain, what about the temporal mines you used in the battle? Could those stop an entire fleet? Wright interfaced with Athena to run combat simulations. The results were not encouraging. The mines work on individual targets. Against a coordinated fleet assault, they would be overwhelmed. We might destroy 50 ships before they adapt. Admiral Cross made a decision. Then we need volunteers for the genetic modification process. Even if only a fraction survive, we need more enhanced humans to crew the Prometheus. Wright looked at the assembled leaders with his modified eyes. Admiral, the enhancement process takes 72 hours minimum. We don't have time to create new crew members. Then what do you suggest? Wright was quiet for a long moment, running calculations that hurt to contemplate. We have one option. We evacuate as many people as possible from Earth and make our stand here. One ship against 1,000, buying time for humanity to escape. The room fell silent. The leaders of Earth realized they were looking at the end of their world. Outside, in the cold of space, reality began to tear as the hegemony prepared to bring an entire fleet through hyperspace. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The hyperspace gateway opened like a wound in reality itself. Space twisted and bent as something impossible pushed through from another dimension. Captain Wright watched from the bridge of the Prometheus as 1,000 hegemony dreadnoughts emerged from the tear in space-time. Each ship was 30 kilometers of black metal and contained weapons. They arranged themselves in a perfect sphere around Earth, blocking every escape route. The smallest of these vessels carried enough firepower to destroy continents. "Athena, analysis," Wright commanded through his neural interface. "The artificial," Intelligence's voice filled his mind. "Captain, each dreadnought is equipped with reality anchors and temporal stabilizers. They have learned from our previous encounter. Our quantum weapons will be significantly less effective." Wright felt the weight of 8 billion lives pressing down on his enhanced consciousness. In his original timeline, this was the moment when Earth died. The moment when humanity's future was erased from existence. Admiral Cross's voice came through. The communication system from the evacuation station orbiting Mars. "Captain, we've managed to evacuate 12 million people to the outer colonies. But there wasn't enough time to save everyone." Wright understood. Most of humanity was still on Earth, waiting to see if one ship could save them from an enemy that had conquered the galaxy. The Supreme Commander of the Hegemony spoke across all frequencies, its voice reaching every communication device in the solar system. "Humans of Earth, you have witnessed the futility of resistance. Your single advanced vessel cannot stand against the might of 1,000 dreadnoughts. Surrender now, and your species will be preserved." Wright opened a channel that broadcast to Earth and the entire Hegemony fleet. "This is Captain Marcus, Wright of the United Earth ship Prometheus. We have a different proposal." "Speak, primitive." Wright's enhanced mind interfaced with Athena, drawing on computational power that exceeded most planetary computer networks. "You have ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years. You have conquered 1,000 civilizations, but you have never faced weapons from your own future. Your future technology failed to save your world in your original timeline." Wright smiled, and through the neural link, his crew smiled with him. "That's because in my original timeline, we only had one ship. But Supreme Commander, you've made a crucial mistake." There was silence from the Hegemony fleet. Wright could feel their sensors trying to penetrate the Prometheus's quantum shielding, searching for weaknesses. "What mistake?" the Supreme Commander finally asked. "You assumed that the Prometheus was the only ship we sent back through time." Wright activated a command that he had been holding in reserve for 50,000 years. Across the solar system, quantum signatures began to activate. Space twisted as temporal stasis fields that had been hidden for millennia suddenly failed. Near Jupiter, a second Prometheus materialized. Near Saturn, a third. Near Uranus, a fourth. In total, 12 identical ships phased into normal space, each one carrying weapons from humanity's future. The Supreme Commander's voice carried confusion and the first hint of fear. "Impossible. Our scans detected only one vessel." Wright's voice carried the satisfaction of a plan 50,000 years in the making. "The Prometheus you've been watching was never alone. We've had 11 backup ships hidden in quantum fields throughout the solar system, each one crewed by volunteers who chose to sacrifice their humanity to save their species." Captain Elena Vasquez's voice came through the communication system from the second Prometheus. "This is Captain Vasquez of UES Defiance, all ships reporting ready for combat." Wright felt his consciousness expand as all 12 ships linked their neural networks together. Suddenly, he wasn't just commanding one vessel, he was part of a fleet where human minds enhanced by future technology worked as a single entity. "All ships activate collective consciousness protocol. We fight as one." Across the 12 ships, 10,000 enhanced humans merged their thoughts into a single tactical intelligence. They could think faster than any computer, react quicker than any artificial intelligence, and most importantly, they could be unpredictable. in ways that the hegemony's logical minds couldn't anticipate. The hegemony fleet moved first. 1,000 dreadnoughts fired simultaneously, their reality manipulation weapons creating beams of pure destruction that should have erased the human ships from existence. But the 12 Prometheus vessels didn't try to block the attacks. Instead, they used probability manipulation to convince the universe that the weapons had missed. Space itself bent around the human ships, redirecting the destruction into alternate timelines. Wright spoke with the voice of 10,000 enhanced humans. Supreme Commander, you conquered the galaxy using superior technology and overwhelming numbers. But you never learned to evolve. You never learned to change. The human fleet fired back, 12 ships unleashing weapons that operated outside the normal laws of physics. Quantum cannons deleted hegemony dreadnoughts from existence. Temporal mines sent enemy vessels into time loops. Probability disruptors convinced space that enemy ships had never been built. Within the first minute of combat, 50 hegemony vessels simply stopped existing. The Supreme Commander's voice carried panic for the first time in 100,000 years. All ships deploy reality anchors, stabilize local space-time. The remaining hegemony dreadnoughts activated defensive systems that had never failed before. They created fields that locked space into a rigid structure, preventing quantum manipulation. Wright felt the change immediately. Quantum weapons effectiveness reduced by 60%, switching to kinetic bombardment. The human ships fired projectiles that traveled faster than light while somehow still having mass. The rounds punched through hegemony shields like paper, causing conventional explosions that destroyed ships in showers of metal and energy. But the aliens adapted quickly. They began firing in coordinated patterns, using their overwhelming numbers, to trap the human ships in crossfire. Athena's voice reached Wright through the neural link. Captain, we're losing ships. UES determination has been destroyed. UES vigilance is critically damaged. Wright felt the death of 2,000 enhanced humans as their consciousness was suddenly severed from the collective link. Each loss diminished the fleet's ability to think and react as a unified entity. All remaining ships implement final protocol. Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication system from the research station. Captain, what's the final protocol? Wright answered while his consciousness directed weapons that rewrote the laws of physics in real time. Dr. Chen, some discoveries are too dangerous for any one species to possess alone. The final protocol ensures that these weapons can never be used for conquest. The 9 remaining human ships began to glow with an inner light. Their quantum cores, normally stable, started to oscillate in specific patterns. The Supreme Commander realized what was happening. They're destabilizing their quantum reactors. All ships retreat immediately. Wright spoke with the combined voice of the enhanced humans, who had chosen to sacrifice everything for their species. Supreme Commander, you wanted our technology. This is how it ends, not with conquest, but with the choice to ensure that ultimate power never corrupts absolutely. The 9 ships formed a sphere around Earth. Their quantum cores reached critical resonance. When they detonated, the explosion wouldn't just destroy the hegemony fleet, it would create a quantum wave that would spread across the galaxy, disabling every reality manipulation device the aliens possessed. Citizens of Earth, Wright broadcast on all frequencies. We came from your future to save your past. The hegemony will survive, but they will no longer possess the power to destroy civilizations. The galaxy will be free to evolve naturally. Elena Vasquez's voice came through the link one last time. Captain Wright, it's been an honor serving with you. The honor was mine. Captain, all ships for humanity. For humanity. 10,000. Enhanced voices replied. The quantum cores reached critical mass. For a brief moment, the 9 human ships became brighter than stars. Then they exploded in a cascade of directed energy that washed over the hegemony fleet like a wave of liquid light. The alien dreadnoughts didn't explode. Instead, their reality manipulation systems simply stopped working. Their weapons became conventional matter. Their shields became normal energy fields. Their engines became standard propulsion systems. Suddenly, 1,000 alien ships found themselves facing Earth's conventional defense fleet on equal terms. Admiral Cross's voice came through space from the command station. All Earth Defense Force vessels engage the enemy. The battle that followed was fierce but conventional. Lasers against plasma cannons, missiles against energy shields, human determination against alien arrogance. Without their reality manipulation, technology, the hegemony discovered that they had forgotten how to fight fair battles. They had relied on overwhelming technological superiority for so long that they had lost the ability to adapt tactically. Within 6 hours, the surviving alien ships were in full retreat. The Supreme Commander's final transmission carried shock, and something that might have been respect. Humans of Earth, we underestimated your species. You possessed ultimate power and chose to destroy it rather than use it for conquest. This is unprecedented.
The enormous alien ships appeared without warning, 7 of them, each larger than the biggest aircraft carrier on Earth. They hung in the sky above major cities across the planet. The world held its breath. 3 days passed before they made contact. Every screen on Earth suddenly showed the same image. A tall, gray-skinned being with 4 eyes and a mouth that seemed too wide for its face. "People of Earth," it said in perfect English. "I am High Commander Zelthur of the Galactic Coalition. We have been observing your world for some time." Frank Calloway watched the broadcast from the cramped common room of Mars Outpost Alpha. At 42, he was older than most of the Marines stationed there. His weathered face remained expressionless as the alien continued speaking. "We come to offer you protection and guidance. The universe is filled with dangers your primitive species cannot imagine." One of the younger Marines snorted. "Primitive? We've colonized Mars, haven't we?" Frank said nothing, his eyes fixed on the screen. He noticed details others might miss. The way the alien's secondary eyes constantly scanned, the almost imperceptible armor beneath its ceremonial robes, the careful framing that prevented viewers from seeing anything useful in the background. Colonel Patricia Wright entered the room, her face grim. "Attention," she said, and everyone stood. "As of now, we're on high alert. No communications with Earth except through official channels." "Ma'am," Frank said, "permission to speak freely?" Wright nodded. She had known Frank for 15 years. Through 2 wars on Earth, she trusted his instincts. "These aliens aren't here to help us," Frank said simply. "Look at their posture, their choice of words. They're conquerors, not allies." Wright frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Major." "Just calling it as I see it, ma'am." The next day, Earth's leaders gathered in New York to meet with alien representatives. Frank and the other Mars personnel watched as world leaders looked small and awkward. Next to the towering aliens, Zelthur addressed the assembly. "Your species has potential, but you are weak. Your bodies break easily. Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are short. But the Coalition protects developing species like yours from greater threats." Frank leaned forward when Zelthur mentioned greater threats. The alien offered no details about these supposed dangers. "In exchange for our protection, we ask only for reasonable access to your resources and your assistance with certain tasks suited to your unique biology." The President of the United States asked, "And if we decline your generous offer?" Zelthur's wide mouth formed what might have been a smile. "Then we would regretfully leave you to face the universe alone. We recently observed the extinction of a species that made that choice. Their world is now uninhabitable." The message was clear to everyone watching. 3 weeks later, Frank found himself on Earth as part of a security detail for the treaty signing ceremony. The Mars base had been ordered to send representatives, and Colonel Wright had specifically requested Frank. "Keep your opinions to yourself," she had told him before they left. "But keep your eyes open." The ceremony took place in a massive tent outside the United Nations building. Alien guards stood at regular intervals, their armor now clearly visible. They carried weapons that looked like curved metallic spines. Frank stood at his post, watching as world leaders prepared to sign the document that would make Earth a protected member of the Galactic Coalition. His face revealed nothing, but his mind cataloged everything: the number of alien guards, the way they moved in Earth's gravity, how they reacted to loud noises. During a break in the ceremony, Frank stepped outside for air. He noticed one of the smaller aliens working on a piece of equipment nearby. "Does that power coupling give you trouble in this atmosphere?" Frank asked casually. The alien looked up, surprised. She, Frank guessed from the voice, seemed younger than the others. "You know about atmospheric interference with plasma conduits?" she asked. Frank shrugged. "Just an educated guess. I'm Frank, by the way." "Zara," the alien replied. "Technical specialist, 3rd class." She seemed to hesitate, then added, "Most humans avoid talking to us." "I'm not most humans," Frank said, "and I'm curious about your people." Zara worked as they talked. Frank learned that the coalition included 12 species, that Earth was the first new world they had found in 50 years, and that coalition ships could travel faster than light, but required enormous energy to do so. "Your species is physically fragile compared to most coalition races," Zara said matter-of-factly. "But you adapt quickly. The High Command finds that interesting." "Interesting how?" Frank asked. Before Zara could answer, a shadow fell over them. A much larger alien in ornate armor stood there, its 4 eyes fixed on Frank. "Technical specialist," it said sharply to Zara. "You are needed elsewhere." Zara quickly gathered her tools and left without looking at Frank. The larger alien stared at Frank. "Humans should focus on their assigned tasks, soldier." Frank nodded respectfully, but his eyes remained steady. "Just getting some air, sir." Later, back inside, Frank watched as Earth's surrender was formalized with handshakes and forced smiles. The treaty would allow coalition forces to establish bases on Earth, the Moon, and Mars. It would give them control over all space travel and advanced technology development. Earth would provide resources and labor in exchange for protection. That night, in his temporary quarters, Frank reviewed the recordings he had secretly made using a small device hidden in his uniform. He studied the aliens' movements, their reactions, their equipment. He focused particularly on how they responded to Earth's environment, the subtle signs of discomfort in bright sunlight, their frequent use of breathing filters. Colonel Wright knocked on his door just after midnight. "You should be sleeping, Major," she said, but her expression told him she wasn't surprised to find him working. "Something's not right about these greater threats, ma'am," Frank said. "They never give specifics. Classic intimidation tactic." Wright sat down heavily in the room's only chair. "I know, but what can we do? Their technology is centuries beyond ours." Frank's face remained calm, but his eyes had the intensity that Wright recognized from past battles. "Technology isn't everything, Colonel. Every species has weaknesses. We just need to find theirs." Wright studied him for a long moment. "You're thinking like a soldier, Frank. I need you to think like a diplomat right now. We have our orders." "Yes, ma'am," Frank said. But as Wright left, both of them knew that Frank Calloway didn't take orders that didn't make sense. And surrendering Earth to alien control made no sense at all. The next day, as Frank prepared to return to Mars, he spotted Zara again, working alone on a shuttle. "Your superior didn't seem happy to see us talking," Frank said, approaching carefully. Zara glanced around before responding. "Commander Vex doesn't approve of unnecessary interaction with protected species." "Protected," Frank repeated. "Is that what we are?" Zara hesitated. "That's the official designation." "And unofficially?" Zara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "I should not say more." "But you want to," Frank observed. After a long pause, Zara said, quietly, "Not all coalition members agree with the current leadership's methods. Some of us believe in true partnership between species." Frank nodded slowly. "I'd like to hear more about that sometime." "Perhaps on Mars," Zara said. "I'm being transferred to your outpost next month." As Frank boarded the transport back to Mars, his mind was already forming plans. The aliens had technology and strength, but they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. They had underestimated Frank Calloway. 6 months passed. Earth was no longer truly Earth. The coalition had taken over quickly and completely. Their ships now filled the skies. Their soldiers walked the streets of every major city. Their bases dominated the Moon and Mars. Frank Calloway stood at the viewing window of Mars Outpost Alpha, watching coalition ships unload new equipment. The once proud human base now served mostly as housing for Earth workers, who maintained the much larger coalition facilities nearby. "Major," a voice said behind him. He turned to see Lieutenant Olivia Sanchez. At 35, she was one of the few officers who had stayed on Mars after the coalition took control. "Got something?" Frank asked quietly. Olivia nodded and handed him a small data tablet. "Another 3 people missing from mining section 5, that makes 17 this month." Frank looked at the names and images. All under 30, all in excellent health. "Just like the others," Olivia confirmed. For months, Frank had been collecting information on humans who disappeared from work details. The coalition always had explanations: transfers, accidents, returns to Earth. But the patterns bothered him. "We need to get inside their research facility," Frank said. Olivia frowned. "That's suicide, Frank. The security there is—" "I know what their security is like," Frank interrupted. "I've been watching for 6 months. They rotate guards every 8 hours. The sensors have a 3-second delay when switching between thermal and motion detection, and technical specialist Zara has been very helpful with information, whether she realizes it or not." Zara had indeed been transferred to Mars, as she'd mentioned. Over the past months, Frank had carefully built a friendship with her, learning about coalition technology and protocols through casual conversations. Later that night, Frank made his move. He wore a maintenance uniform and carried tools as he approached the smaller side entrance of the coalition research facility. He had timed his approach perfectly. The guard shift was changing, and Zara had mentioned a routine system check that would briefly affect security sensors. Frank slipped inside, moving confidently as if he belonged there. Coalition members rarely looked closely at human workers. They all looked the same to alien eyes. The facility was massive, with high ceilings to accommodate the taller aliens. Frank followed the path he had memorized from maintenance schematics Olivia had obtained. 3 levels down, the corridors became narrower and the lighting dimmer. Frank heard voices ahead, the strange melodic language of the coalition. He ducked into a side room until they passed. The room was filled with containers labeled in alien script. Frank recognized some characters from his studies. The labels indicated biological materials. Moving deeper into the facility, Frank finally reached a secured door marked with red symbols that Zara had once translated as specialized research. Using a stolen access card, he entered. What he saw inside froze his blood. Humans, at least 20, were suspended in clear tubes filled with greenish liquid. They appeared unconscious, with various tubes and wires connected to their bodies. Alien researchers moved between the tubes, taking readings and samples. Frank recorded everything with a tiny camera hidden in his tool belt. He needed evidence. As he watched, one researcher extracted a long needle from a young man's chest. The human's body convulsed, though his eyes remained closed. Frank's hand instinctively moved toward his concealed knife, but he forced himself to remain hidden. Attacking now would save no one. As he prepared to retreat, an alarm suddenly blared. Frank wasn't sure if he had triggered it or if it was unrelated, but he knew he needed to leave immediately. He headed toward a different exit, hoping to avoid the main security response. As he rounded a corner, he came face to face with 3 coalition guards. They were each nearly 7 feet tall, wearing the light armor used for internal security. "Human," one barked in English. "Identify yourself." Frank raised his tools. "Maintenance. Section 12. There's a leak in the cooling system." The guard's 4 eyes narrowed. No maintenance was scheduled. Frank knew further lies were pointless. He dropped his tools and attacked. The aliens were stronger, much stronger, but Frank had been studying their movements for months. They had evolved on a high-gravity world, making them powerful but somewhat slow in Earth-normal conditions. Frank used this to his advantage, striking at joints and sensory organs. The first guard fell when Frank landed a precise blow to the breathing apparatus at its neck, a vulnerability Zara had unknowingly revealed during a casual discussion of coalition physiology. The second guard managed to strike Frank hard enough to send him sprawling, but Frank rolled and came up behind the alien, using his knife to sever the neural connector at the base of its skull, another detail gleaned from maintenance work he had observed. The third guard called for backup, but Frank silenced it with a thrown tool that struck directly between its primary eyes, disorienting it long enough for Frank to close the distance and finish the fight. Breathing heavily, Frank collected his recording device and fled through the maintenance tunnels. By the time he reached the human quarters, coalition forces were on full alert. Colonel Wright was waiting in his room. One look at her face told Frank she knew what he had done. "You stupid, reckless fool," she said, but there was no real anger in her voice. "Did you find anything?" Frank connected his recording device to a secure terminal. As the images appeared, Wright's expression hardened. "Those bastards," she whispered. "They told us the missing workers were being transferred." "They're experimenting on us," Frank said, "testing our physical limits, our adaptability." "I'm not sure why." Wright was silent for a long moment. "This changes everything, but what can we do? A direct confrontation would be suicide. The Coalition's technology and weapons are too advanced." Frank nodded. "We don't fight them directly, not yet. First, we need to understand them better. Every species has weaknesses. And how do we do that?" "We need a scientist," Frank said. "Someone who understands alien biology, and I know just the person." The next day, while Coalition forces were still searching for the intruder who had breached their facility, Frank and Olivia left Mars on a supply ship bound for Earth. Their official orders, signed by Colonel Wright, listed them as security for a routine supply run. Their real mission was to find Dr. Alan Morgan, a xenobiologist who had been among the first to study Coalition physiology before being removed from the official research team for asking too many questions. As the small ship broke Mars' orbit, Frank looked out at the Coalition mothership looming over Earth like a predator. "They think we're weak," he said quietly. "That's their first mistake." Olivia checked their course. "And their second mistake?" Frank's eyes remained fixed on the alien vessel. "They took our people. No one does that to humans and survives." Earth looked different now. Coalition structures rose like strange metal trees among human buildings. Alien ships constantly flew overhead. Coalition soldiers patrolled the streets, their tall forms making humans look like children beside them. Frank and Olivia moved carefully through Chicago, now called Earth Distribution Center 7 by the Coalition. They wore the gray uniforms of human workers, heads down like everyone else. "There," Olivia said quietly, nodding toward a small apartment building. "Third floor, according to our information." They found Dr. Alan Morgan's apartment and knocked. No answer. Frank knocked again, harder. The door finally opened. A thin man with unkempt gray hair and suspicious eyes looked out at them. "Dr. Morgan?" Frank asked. "Depends who's asking," the man replied. Frank glanced around the empty hallway. "My name is Major Frank Calloway. This is Lieutenant Olivia Sanchez. We're from Mars Outpost Alpha." Morgan's eyes widened slightly. "Military? There is no human military anymore." "Not officially," Frank agreed. "May we come in?" Once inside, Frank showed Morgan the recording from the Coalition research facility. The scientist watched without speaking, his face growing paler. "I suspected. Something like this," Morgan said when the recording ended. "That's why they removed me from the research team. I asked too many questions about their interest in human biology." "What are they doing to those people?" Olivia asked. Morgan ran a hand through his tangled hair. "Testing our limits, our adaptability. You see, the Coalition species evolved on high-gravity worlds with thick atmospheres. Their bodies are stronger than ours, but less flexible. Flexible how? Frank asked. In every way, Morgan said. Their cellular structure, their immune systems, their ability to adapt to new environments. He pointed to his small kitchen table, covered with makeshift laboratory equipment. I've been continuing my research in secret. Look at this. He showed them microscope slides with alien cell samples. Coalition species have very little genetic variation. They're stronger than us, yes, but they're also more vulnerable to certain types of radiation, bacteria, and viruses that humans have lived with for millennia. Frank leaned forward. You're saying they have weaknesses we could exploit? Potentially, Morgan nodded. But their technology still far surpasses ours. Any direct confrontation would... A loud bang interrupted him as the apartment door burst open. 4 coalition soldiers rushed in, weapons raised. Step away from the human scientist, one ordered. This research is unauthorized. Frank moved instantly, using the kitchen table as a shield. Olivia dove for their bags, pulling out the small stun weapons they had smuggled from Mars. Get the samples, Morgan shouted, grabbing a case from beneath the table. Frank tackled the nearest alien, using the close quarters to negate the creature's superior strength. Olivia fired her stun weapon at another, hitting it in the breathing apparatus. The alien dropped, gasping. This way, Morgan shouted, revealing a hidden door behind a bookshelf. Service corridor. Frank and Olivia followed, firing behind them, to slow the pursuit. They raced down narrow stairs and through a maze of maintenance tunnels. I prepared for this, Morgan panted as they ran. Been expecting them for weeks. They emerged 3 blocks away and quickly blended into a crowd of human workers heading to their shifts. Coalition alarms blared in the distance. Hours later, they reached a small cabin outside the city. Morgan had stocked it with supplies and more research equipment. We should be safe here for a while, he said. This area has mineral deposits that interfere with their scanners. Frank examined the case Morgan had saved. It contained slides, data tablets, and several vials of liquid. What exactly have you discovered? He asked. Morgan held up one of the vials. This is a compound that affects coalition physiology. It disrupts their cellular function when exposed to certain radiation frequencies that are harmless to humans. A weapon? Olivia asked. A tool, Morgan corrected. One that could level the playing field, but deploying it would require access to their environmental systems, likely on their mothership. Frank considered this. So we need to get aboard the mothership. That's impossible, Morgan said. Security there is absolute. Nothing's impossible, Frank replied. And I think I know how to do it. Later that night, as Morgan slept, Olivia joined Frank outside. He was looking up at the stars, partially blocked by the massive shape of the coalition mothership in orbit. You're thinking about her, aren't you? Olivia asked. That alien technician you mentioned, Frank nodded. Zara. She's different from the others. She questions things. Can you trust her? No, Frank admitted. But I understand her. She wants to do what's right, even if it goes against her leaders. Olivia sighed. What's your plan, Frank? The coalition is planning something big. Those experiments aren't just scientific curiosity, they're preparing for something. Frank turned to face her. I need to get captured. What? That's suicide. Captured humans are taken to the mothership for processing before being sent to the research facilities. If I get captured during one of the public protests, I'll be taken directly to the ship. And then what? Olivia demanded. You'll be alone, unarmed, surrounded by enemies. Not alone, Frank said. You and Morgan will work with Colonel Wright to prepare the compound and find a way to transmit the right frequency once I'm in position. Olivia shook her head. This is crazy. It's the only way, Frank insisted. Morgan's compound could work, but someone needs to deploy it from inside. Their discussion was interrupted by an emergency broadcast on all channels. The Coalition High Commander appeared on screen. People of Earth, Zelthor announced. Due to increasing resource needs, the Coalition has decided to implement a partial evacuation plan. 20 million humans will be relocated to make room for Coalition settlers. This is a necessary step for Earth's continued protection. Frank and Olivia stared at the screen in shock. They're not just exploiting us, Olivia whispered. They're replacing us. Frank's expression hardened. We need to contact right, and we need to move fast. The next morning, Frank prepared a secure communication to Mars, while Morgan continued working on his compound. We'll need someone with technical skills for the transmission, Morgan said. Someone who understands both human and coalition communication systems. I know just the person, Frank replied. Greg Winters. He's still on Mars, working in communications. As Frank finalized his plan, coalition ships began landing in major cities worldwide, ready to start the relocation process. Reports of resistance were met with immediate and brutal suppression. Time was running out for humanity. Frank knew his plan was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but watching coalition forces round up humans like cattle strengthened his resolve. I'll join the protest in Denver tomorrow, he told Olivia and Morgan. That should get me captured and sent to the mothership. Olivia gripped his arm. Frank, there has to be another way. If there is, we don't have time to find it, he said, looking up at the mothership looming in the sky. Sometimes one soldier is all it takes. The protest in Denver grew larger than expected. Thousands of humans filled the streets shouting and holding signs against the coalition's relocation plan. Coalition soldiers formed lines, their tall figures imposing against the human crowd. Frank moved through the protesters, making himself visible. He wore no disguise. If his plan was to work, he needed to be recognized. He pushed to the front of the crowd, directly facing the alien soldiers. We won't be your lab rats anymore, Frank shouted louder than the others. He held up a tablet showing images from the research facility. We know what you're doing to us. The crowd grew louder around him. Frank continued shouting, drawing attention. It didn't take long before coalition officers pointed him out. 6 soldiers moved toward him through the crowd. Frank didn't resist when they grabbed him. That was part of the plan. As they dragged him away, he caught a glimpse of Olivia watching from a distance. Their eyes met briefly before he was pushed into a transport vehicle. Inside the vehicle, Frank was restrained and scanned. A coalition officer examined the results. This one is on the alert list, the officer said. Priority transport to the Dominion for interrogation. Frank kept his expression neutral, but inwardly he felt a small victory. The Dominion was the coalition mothership. Phase 1 of his plan had worked. The transport lifted off, heading for orbit. Through a small window, Frank watched Earth grow, smaller below. The enormous shape of the Dominion filled the view as they approached. Up close, the mothership was even more massive than it appeared from Earth. The transport docked in one of many bays along the ship's hull. Frank was marched through the docking area, surrounded by coalition guards. The interior of the Dominion was unlike anything Frank had seen. Corridors stretched in all directions, filled with aliens of various ranks. The air felt different, heavier, with a slight sweet smell that made Frank's throat itch. They took him to a holding area where other captured humans waited. Most sat in silence, eyes down. Frank scanned the room carefully, memorizing the layout, noting the positions of guards and surveillance devices. After several hours, Frank was taken to an interrogation room. A coalition officer entered, taller than the guards and wearing more elaborate armor. Human, the officer said, you have been identified as a disruptive element. Your actions at Mars Research Facility and your subsequent escape have been troublesome. Frank said nothing. You were found with unauthorized images of coalition research, the officer continued. This is a serious violation of protection protocols. Frank looked directly at the alien. Why are you experimenting on us? The officer seemed surprised by the direct question. Your species is being studied for its own protection. Protection, Frank repeated. Is that what you call taking our people and testing their limits until they die? Your understanding is limited, the officer said dismissively. The coalition has encountered many species. All must be categorized according to their usefulness. Usefulness for what? The officer didn't answer. Instead, he pressed a button on his wrist device. Frank felt a sharp pain in his head. as something activated in the room, some kind of neural scanner. Your resistance is noted, the officer said, but ultimately meaningless. You will tell us about your collaborators. Frank endured hours of questioning. The neural scanner made it difficult to lie, but Frank had been trained to resist interrogation. He focused on partial truths, on memories, of Mars before the coalition arrived, on anything except Olivia, Morgan, and their plan. When the session ended, Frank was exhausted but satisfied. He had revealed nothing important, and he was still aboard the Dominion. He was taken to a different holding area, one with individual cells. Through the clear barrier of his cell, Frank could see dozens of similar cells, most containing humans. Some wore tattered civilian clothes, others wore work uniforms. All looked scared and defeated. Frank studied the cell systems carefully. The barriers appeared to be energy fields rather than physical materials. The controls were outside each cell, operated by guards. Most importantly, Frank noticed that the environmental systems for the prison section ran through visible conduits in the ceiling, exactly the kind of access he needed. That night, as the ship's lighting dimmed to simulate night, Frank felt a subtle vibration in the small communication device hidden under the skin behind his ear. Morgan had designed it to be undetectable by coalition scanners. "Frank," Greg Winter's voice came through faintly. "Can you acknowledge?" Frank tapped the device once with his tongue. A simple yes. "Good," Greg continued. "Colonel Wright has coordinated with Olivia and Morgan. The compound is ready. We've hacked into the ship's system enough to send you schematics." Frank's head filled with images, deck plans, system layouts, access points. The information came in bursts, flooding his vision temporarily before his brain processed and stored it. "We've located Olivia," Greg said. "She's in Research Section 7, 2 decks above you, still alive, but they've started testing." Frank tapped twice. "Understood. The central environmental system is on Deck 12. That's where you need to release Morgan's compound. We'll transmit the activating frequency once you confirm deployment." Frank examined the schematics in his mind. Getting to Olivia and then to Deck 12 would be difficult but not impossible. The ship was huge, with many maintenance passages and service tunnels designed for smaller worker aliens. "One more thing," Greg added. "We've detected unusual activity in the Coalition fleet. Multiple ships are preparing for something big. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." Frank tapped twice again. "Good luck, Major," Greg said before the communication ended. Frank waited until the guard patrol passed his cell, then examined the small access panel near the floor. According to the schematics, it connected to a waste management system that ran throughout this section. It was too small for most Coalition species, but not for a human. Working silently, Frank loosened the panel. Years of mechanical work on Mars made the task easier than it might have been. When the panel came free, he saw a narrow passage beyond. He waited for the right moment when the guard patrol was at the far end of the corridor. Then he squeezed through the opening, replacing the panel behind him. The passage was tight and dark. Frank crawled through it, following the mental map from Greg's transmission. He moved carefully, avoiding sensor nodes where the schematics indicated they would be. After what felt like hours of crawling through increasingly small spaces, Frank reached a junction that opened into a larger maintenance corridor. Here he could stand, though he had to hunch slightly under the low ceiling. Frank moved quickly now, working his way toward Research Section 7. He had to find Olivia first. Then together they would reach the environmental systems and deploy Morgan's compound. As Frank reached the access point to Research Section 7, he heard voices on the other side, Coalition researchers discussing their work in their melodic language. Frank understood enough to make out key phrases: human adaptability, impressive resistance, suitable for the purpose. Frank pressed against the wall as a door opened nearby. Through the narrow gap, he saw something that chilled his blood. Beyond the researchers was a larger chamber where dozens of humans hung suspended in the same green liquid he had seen on Mars. But this operation was much bigger, and at the far end of the chamber stood High Commander Zell Thur himself, examining the results on a large display. Frank's jaw tightened. Whatever the coalition was planning, the highest levels of leadership were involved. This wasn't just scientific curiosity. The coalition had a specific purpose for humanity, and Frank was determined to find out what it was. Frank waited patiently until the researchers left the main chamber. Only 2 guards remained, positioned at the entrance. He needed to get past them to reach Olivia and the other captives. Frank checked his pocket for the small device Morgan had given him. It was a simple thing, just a cylinder with a button, but Morgan promised it would temporarily disrupt coalition sensory systems. Frank pressed the button and tossed the device into the corridor. It made a soft clicking sound, then released, a high-pitched noise that humans couldn't hear. The guards immediately put their hands to their heads, disoriented. Frank moved quickly. He struck the first guard at the base of the neck where their breathing apparatus connected. The alien dropped without a sound. The second guard managed to reach for a weapon, but Frank was faster. A sharp blow to the guard's primary eyes stunned it long enough for Frank to knock it unconscious. Inside the chamber, Frank moved between the suspended humans. Each floated in a tube of green liquid, connected to machines that monitored their vital signs. Frank checked the names displayed on each tube until he found Olivia. She looked pale but alive. Frank examined the control panel on her tube. Using what he had learned from Zara about coalition technology, he carefully disconnected the monitoring systems, then activated the emergency drain sequence. The green liquid drained from Olivia's tube. As the last of it emptied, the tube opened. Olivia fell forward and Frank caught her. She coughed violently, expelling liquid from her lungs. "Frank?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I've got you," Frank said. "Can you walk?" Olivia nodded weakly. "The others?" "No time," Frank said. "We need to reach the environmental controls. Then we can free everyone." Frank helped Olivia to her feet. He gave her one of the guards' weapons and they headed for the exit. But as they reached the door, it slid open. Zara stood there, her 4 eyes wide with surprise. "Frank?" she said. "What are you doing here?" Frank raised his weapon, but something in Zara's posture stopped him. She wasn't calling for guards. She wasn't raising an alarm. "You knew about this," Frank said, gesturing to the humans in tubes. "You knew what they were doing to us." Zara's eyes lowered. "Not at first. When I found out, I've been helping others escape. Not many, but some." Frank studied her. "Why?" "Because this is wrong," Zara said simply. "The coalition was meant to protect species, not exploit them." Frank made a decision. "We're heading to the Central Environmental System. We have a way to stop this." "I can help you get there," Zara said. "But we must hurry. The High Command is accelerating the project." "What project?" Olivia asked, still leaning on Frank for support. Zara looked around nervously. "They call it the Adaptability Initiative. They're not just studying humans. They're trying to incorporate human adaptability into their own species." "What does that mean?" Frank asked. "They're creating hybrids," Zara explained, "taking human genetic material and combining it with their own. The experiments are to find the strongest, most adaptable human specimens." "For what purpose?" Olivia demanded. "War," Zara said quietly. "There is no greater threat, as they claimed. The coalition is the greatest threat in this part of the galaxy. They conquer species and take what they need, but they've reached a limit. Their bodies cannot adapt to certain environments. They need humanity's adaptability to continue expanding." Frank absorbed this information. So everything, the protection treaties, the relocation, it was all to study and harvest us. "Yes," Zara admitted, "and the process begins in earnest today. The High Commander is preparing to address the fleet." Frank looked at Olivia. "We need to move, now." The 3 of them moved through service corridors, avoiding patrols. Zara's knowledge of the ship proved invaluable. They reached Deck 12 without being detected. The Central Environmental Control Room was smaller than Frank expected. Just a circular chamber with a series of control panels surrounding a central column. "This regulates atmosphere throughout the ship," Zara explained. If your compound works, it will affect everyone aboard. Frank removed a small vial from a hidden pocket in his boot. The liquid inside was clear, almost like water. Morgan had assured him it would work, but only if activated by the right frequency. Frank poured the liquid into an intake valve on the central column. Now we need to transmit the signal to activate it. The communication array is there, Zara said, pointing to a console. As Frank moved toward it, the door slid open. High Commander Zelthur himself stood there, flanked by 4 elite guards. The troublesome human, Zelthur said, his wide mouth forming what might have been a smile. And our own traitor, Zara. How disappointing. The guards raised their weapons, but Zelthur gestured for them to wait. I'm curious, human, the High Commander said to Frank. What did you hope to accomplish here? Your species is weak. Your technology is primitive, yet you persist in this pointless resistance. Frank faced the alien leader calmly. You keep saying we're weak. But you need us, don't you? You need what makes us human. Zelthur's expression changed slightly. We need certain genetic traits. Yes, your adaptability is useful. And these greater threats you warned us about? Frank asked. They don't exist, do they? A moment of silence filled the room before Zelthur replied. There are always threats in the universe, human. We simply ensure we remain the greatest one. During this exchange, Frank had been slowly moving toward the communication console. Now, he lunged for it, pressing the emergency transmission button that would connect directly to Mars Outpost Alpha. The guards fired, but Frank had already sent the signal. A beam struck him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He fell to the floor, clutching his wound. Zelthur approached him slowly. A brave but futile gesture. Whatever you've done will be undone. I don't think so, Frank said through gritted teeth. A soft tone sounded throughout the ship. The ventilation system hummed as it cycled air through the entire vessel. Nothing seemed to happen at first. Then one of the guards stumbled. Another put a hand to its throat. Zelthur himself blinked, his 4 eyes rapidly. What have you done? The High Commander demanded, his voice suddenly weaker. Leveled the playing field, Frank replied. The compound was working, affecting the coalition aliens just as Morgan had predicted. Their cellular structure was breaking down, weakened by the frequency transmitted from Mars. Zelthur fell to his knees. This is impossible. Your species is too primitive. That's where you made your mistake, Frank said, standing despite his injury. You thought physical strength was the only kind of strength. But humanity's real strength is here, he tapped his head, and here, he placed a hand over his heart. As Zelthur weakened further, Frank moved to the ship's main communication system. With Zara's help, he activated the broadcast function that would transmit to all coalition ships and bases. This is Major Frank, Calloway of Earth, he said into the transmitter. The coalition has lied to you. There is no greater threat. They've conquered dozens of species using the same tactics of fear and false protection, Frank continued, revealing everything about the experiments, the true purpose of the protection treaties, and the adaptability initiative. We don't want war, Frank concluded, but we will not be harvested. We will not be experiments. Earth is our home, and humanity will defend it. As the message went out, coalition forces throughout the solar system began to collapse, affected by the same compound now circulating through the Dominion. On Earth, on the Moon, on Mars, the once mighty aliens were suddenly vulnerable. Colonel Wright, coordinating with resistance cells globally, launched simultaneous attacks on weakened coalition bases. Humans who had been forced to serve as workers suddenly became liberators. On the Dominion, Frank helped Olivia free the captive humans. Zara assisted, along with other coalition members who had secretly opposed the High Command's methods. In the HYF Command Center, Frank found Zelthur, barely conscious but still alive. You could have been our allies, Frank told the alien leader. Instead, you chose to be our masters. You cannot survive alone in this galaxy, Zelthur gasped. We won't be alone, Frank replied. We'll build real alliances, based on mutual respect, not fear and domination. 3 months later, Frank stood at a podium in the rebuilt United Nations building. Representatives from Earth sat alongside delegates from coalition worlds who had chosen to form a new alliance with humanity. We were mocked for our weakness, Frank said to the assembly. But we proved that true strength comes in many forms. Humanity stands ready to join the galactic community, not as servants, not as masters, but as equals. As he spoke, Frank noticed Zara in the audience. She would return to her homeworld as an ambassador for the new alliance. Olivia sat with other military leaders, now tasked with developing Earth's first true space defense force. Dr. Morgan had been appointed to lead a new institute for interspecies medical research. Frank looked out at the gathered humans and aliens. The universe is vast and often dangerous, but we face it stronger when we stand together. After the ceremony, Frank walked outside and looked up at the night sky. The stars seemed brighter somehow, full of promise rather than threat. One soldier had stood alone, but he hadn't remained alone for long, and now humanity would never stand alone again.